See what happens. Start recording. Okay, we're off to the races. So the cardiovascular system. So this is an important concept to understand. There are two circuits, the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. So on the right side of the heart, the blood comes in through the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. That blood is dumped into the right atrium. Then it's pumped through to the right ventricle, and then it's pumped to the lungs. Then oxygenated blood comes back to the heart through the pulmonary veins, and this is the only veins that carry oxygenated blood. So the oxygenated blood returning to the heart goes into the pulmonary veins and into the left atrium, and then pumped to the rest of the body by the left atrium through the aorta. So notice this is the pulmonary artery right here, pulmonary trunk, pulmonary arteries. So there's two circulations, blood going to the lungs and back, blood going to every place else and back. So that's called the systemic circuit and the pulmonary circuit. So the heart is constantly beating. It's amazing how it just keeps beating automatically. We've talked about that. So the ultimate purpose of the heart is to get blood to all of the capillary beds so that oxygen can be released, nutrients can be released, and CO2 and waste are picked up and ultimately end up in the kidney to purify the blood and get rid of toxins and waste. So where's the heart? It's in between the two lungs. There's the thyroid gland above it. The trachea is just below the thyroid gland, or it goes all the way up to the cavity, to the nasopharynx. So the heart has a parietal pericardium. That's the outside covering of the heart. So here we have the parietal pericardium, and then loose connective tissue, and then visceral pericardium. So there's two layers of the pericardium, the parietal, then a little sac area, and then you go to the visceral pericardium. So the heart is surrounded by a membrane that protects it and also reduces friction as the heart moves, but the heart's going to be moving all around. So you can imagine a balloon that is, take your fist and displace the rounded shape of the balloon. That's where you get two layers. The inner wall, the visceral airspace in between the parietal pericardium and the visceral pericardium. The visceral pericardium touches the heart. Then there's the airspace. Then there's the outer covering, which is the parietal pericardium. You should know all of these parts of the heart. So right atrium, superior vena cava, bringing in blood from the top of the body. The inferior vena cava brings in blood to the right atrium from the lower half of the body. The right ventricle is going to receive blood from the right atrium. The right ventricle is going to pump blood into the pulmonary trunk and into the left and right pulmonary arteries. Blood will return to the heart through the pulmonary veins, go into the left atrium, and then that's pumped to the left ventricle. And then the pumping goes through the aorta and all over the body. You have blood vessels that supply the head and the neck area. But all the blood going to the body is carried in the aorta. So that's the systemic circulation. And then blood going to the lung from the right side of the heart, that's the pulmonary circulation. If you look at it, could be a cow heart, a human heart, and if we would have been in a lab, we would have dissected a sheep heart or a cow heart. But make sure you study in Blackboard. You had to study the sheep brain. Here it is, sheep brains over here. And we're back here. Okay, so you should be able to identify all of these cavities and chambers and parts of the heart and so on. Here's another view of the heart. Notice that there's a coronary sinus. The heart has to have a lot of energy. It has to have oxygen supplied, nutrients, energy, molecules, and so it has to have delivery of oxygen, delivery of nutrients, and a lot of ATP, which it makes itself in the muscles. So we have left atrium, right, and so on. Here's the superior. This is an anterior view of the heart. Posterior view of the heart. And here we have the superior vena cava that collects blood from the top portion of the body, and the inferior vena cava that brings blood from the lower part of the body. So that's the first entry of blood in the starting the process of sending blood to the lungs and sending blood to the body. We talked about the layers that are in the pericardium. So we have the pericardial membrane, the parietal pericardium, which has a parietal layer and a visceral layer. Well, we talking about that, okay? So you have this airspace, so the parietal pericardium, and then next to the heart there's the visceral pericardium. So that this contains fluid, and so that helps reduce friction as the heart moves. Heart muscle has its branching. It has one or two nuclei, and it has what's called an intercalated disc, which is also a gap junction. So these junctions are electrical synapses. They allow, once heart muscle tissue begins to contract, the heart has to beat from top to bottom, and it has to be a coordinated beat from top to bottom in order to make sure the heart is pumping. And these electrical synapses, gap junctions, or intercalated disc, allow heart cells to very rapidly take action potential, electrical excitation, and allow those to move rapidly through the heart muscle so that the heart can beat and actually wring the blood out of itself and pump from top to bottom. Here's a better view of that. And the myocardium is all the muscle of the heart. So this pericardial, the parietal pericardium, and the visceral pericardium. So there's the outside, the parietal pericardium is made up of a fibrous layer and connective tissue. The epithelium lines the inner wall of the parietal pericardium, and the epicardium is the cells that line the outer surface of the heart. So the heart muscle is arranged, so as I say, you can pump from top to bottom and actually wring out the blood as the blood gets to the ventricles, so it can be pumped to the lungs from the right side of the heart and pumped to the all the rest of the body, the systemic circulation. It can be pumped from the left side of the heart. This is a better view of the intercalated disc. You can see them right here. You can see that the cardiac muscle is striated, meaning that it has these dark and light bands going across the fibers, across the longitudinal axis of these heart muscles. And notice the heart muscles are also branching. This is a picture to represent the same thing. You can see that heart muscle has mitochondrion, a nucleus. The myofibrils are the contractile proteins, just like in skeletal muscle. And heart is beating all the time as long as you're alive. An incredible undertaking. And here they talk about the intercalated disc, which are electrical synapses or gap junctions between the various heart cells. Okay, let's stop there. Go back to here. Stop recording for a moment. Stop recording.